Hey, it's A Humble Collector here. In today's video, we're taking a look at the two-panel death card of Franz Moger. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. Well, I guess a bit of a disclaimer. This is an SS card. As always with SS cards, I like to put a bit of a warning up ahead that I read these cards verbatim, so you guys know what it says in the German there. So you don't have to translate it yourself. When I say words like heroic, etc., I do not condone that. I don't believe that. That is, just me transferring the card information to you. And this is going to be a particularly dark video, even for an SS card. So going from the top of the card here, we have Memorial of SS Rottenfuhrer Franz Moger, who was a homeowner's son and tailor from Hagen in the municipality of Hohenhart, who died a heroic death for the Führer, people, and fatherland on July 3rd, 1942, in the fight against the Soviet Union at the age of 31. Now, I was actually able to find a casualty record for Franz. He was born on November 19th, 1911, in Penneberg, and was a member of the staff of the 1st Battalion of SS Infantry Regiment 8 Motorized, which at the time of his death was serving with the 1st SS Infantry Brigade. So, the 1st SS Infantry Brigade was directly involved in the Holocaust. They were part of Einsatzgruppe C, operating in the Soviet Union. So for a little bit of background, even before the 1st SS Infantry Brigade was formed, the 8th SS Infantry Regiment was in Poland, and the unit had been formed from concentration camp guards. Whether Franz was a guard prior to joining this unit, I don't know, but that's where the first batch of these guys came from. And while in Poland, they were responsible for multiple crimes, even before the invasion of the Soviet Union began. They were responsible for burning several villages, killing a lot of people. In fact, they killed all of the military-aged men in the village of Kolovik, and were also engaged in killings in villages like Adamov, Malakov, and in Mita Zirtsa. And that's just in April of 1940. So in the Soviet Union, besides assisting the Einsatzgruppen in their operations, they were also involved in fighting partisans behind the line, burning villages, reprisal killings, all that kind of stuff. And really the sobering thing here, I guess, is that Franz had the rank of Rottenfuhrer, which is equivalent to an Obergefreiter in the Heer. And that meant that, at least on paper, per my understanding of the rank, he would have been at the level to control like a squad. So not only was Franz almost certainly involved in the Holocaust, he was probably also giving orders during these actions. Now, as for Franz's death, it appears that he had the top of his skull torn open by shrapnel and was taken to a field hospital in Rakitina, which is near Kursk, where he would die as a result of that injury. He's believed to be buried at the Kursk Military Cemetery. Now, moving to the bottom of the card here, I set out with a joyful spirit. Farewell, my beloved father's house. Farewell, dear ones, don't cry. Obedience is a soldier's duty. I fought with a strong hand. The battle was hot in enemy territory. Then my tunic became scarred. My steel helmet also turned bloody red. My fate was a soldier's death. Your grave in the distant land is indeed a severe torment for us. But take this as a death pledge. Your grave shall not be deserted. Every evening when the bell rings, look. Our spirit goes there lovingly, and praying scatters devotional flowers in the hero's grave with a pious mind. So before we move to panel 2 here, I find it interesting, the line about his helmet turning a bloody red given the cause of his injury. It's possible the family knew that, and that's why they picked that verse. It's actually a bit unusual for the kind of verses that are on these cards. It has similar elements to a lot of the other ones I've looked at, but I don't think I've had one that goes into that kind of, not gory detail, but I guess, scarring uniform, bloody helmet, just kind of imagery you don't normally see. And then on the back of the card here, we just have a cross. Now, I think this might have been a 4-panel card at one point. There's probably another panel that had some other kind of backplate and then probably a photograph of Franz. I can't prove that, but this just seems like the kind of backplate you'd see on a 4-panel card. And the cross is actually kind of interesting. A comment that I get a lot on these videos is, how is it that you have the Nazi imagery and the Christian imagery on the same thing? People seem to have a hard time wrapping their head around that. Especially when it comes to the SS. Because since World War II, this kind of idea about the SS is that these guys are a cult, they're pagan, and that is technically true that, Himmler and a lot of the higher-ups had some weird neo-pagan stuff that they were into, But that whole thing never really caught on throughout the entire organization. It was a thing that, people might do just to like look good in the eyes of their superiors. There's a lot of weird tension between Christianity and Nazi ideology, not just in the SS, but throughout all of the Third Reich. And there's been several books on the topic. It's one that I want to research and maybe eventually do a video on, because it is fascinating. But one of the interesting things, for example, is that chaplains were not allowed to serve in SS units. There were chaplains in the Kriegsmarine, there were chaplains in the Wehrmacht, but there were no chaplains in the SS or the Luftwaffe. Now, the SS is interesting, though, because despite the fact they didn't have chaplains, you actually could not put down atheist as your religious beliefs on your SS documents. You had to either choose Protestant, Catholic, or believer in God. So there's, right there, you already have some weird kind of tension, as it were. And I think another kind of important thing to talk about here is that, these cards are reflections of what the family wanted. There's nothing on these cards that isn't what the family wanted to portray to whoever was reading them. So it's quite possible that Franz was raised Catholic or Protestant and no longer believed. And, joined the SS, fully bought into all of the Nazi ideology. Maybe he was neo-pagan. I have no idea. But his family, his parents, were still Christian. And, when their son was killed, they wanted to memorialize him in the Christian manner. So just because there's a cross on this card really doesn't tell us anything at all about Franz's religious beliefs. But he could very well have been a Christian. And that, of course, brings about the whole discussion of, how can the soldiers of Nazi Germany square Christian doctrine with what they're doing, all the crimes they're committing, against their fellow man. And that kind of leads us to a really deep philosophical question, I guess, of, how can people believe two contradictory things at once? And the answer is actually quite easy. I mean, think about people in your own life who hold two wildly different views and don't see the contradiction between the two. So it is quite possible that Franz was Christian. He was raised Christian, stayed Christian, believed in God, and still carried out all of these horrible acts. There's really, unfortunately, no way to know based off the information that we have. But yeah, I recognize that I feel like I've been ranting, but that was kind of a topic I wanted to address, and I feel like this was a good card to kind of do that on. And yeah, we haven't had a card that I can remember that's directly related to the Holocaust. We've had SS cards before for guys that were in units that definitely committed war crimes and things, but to have a card for somebody that was directly in an Einsatzgruppe, one of the guys carrying out the Holocaust, is rather sobering. This has actually been a very hard video to make, if I'm being honest. But it's history, and it's important to talk about. I think this is a really interesting card for the reasons that I've discussed. Yeah, I can't really think of a good way to end the video, actually, because part of me feels like my normal outro doesn't really do the heavy subject matter justice here. But on the other hand, my desire right now to rain a lot of profanity on the SS and all the terrible things they did would not be good for the professional image that I like to have for the channel. So I guess at that point, I'll just leave it off. But, I'd be curious to hear what you guys think down below. Thank you all for watching. Happy collecting. And I will see you all again very soon.